Well, good morning, Restoration Community. I hope you're doing well, and I'm glad you're here online with us as we complete this Take Heart series. And I'm more excited about next week where we get to be together in person right here in this room, safely and distantly, but still together as we get to worship in one place next week. But for right now, thanks for being here online as we wrap up this Take Heart series. And I don't know about you, but this week my heart has been kind of all over the place. And I have felt despair, I've felt discouraged, I've felt discomfort, and more than anything, for me, I've just felt that my heart has been broken. The things we've seen, the stories that have come out, the people who have been needlessly not just persecuted, but killed because of the color of their skin is something that I don't think that any one of us should be able to live with. That we should be able to walk around like nothing's going on. That is unacceptable. It's unbelievable that that still happens in our culture today. And for you and I, we may have the sad realization that this isn't the first time this has happened, that somebody has been persecuted or even killed for the color of their skin. But I do believe that we have a responsibility as followers of Jesus to make sure that it's the last time that this happens to somebody because of the color of their skin. And so I hope your heart has been wrecked as mine has. I hope that maybe you have been taking personal introspection of what does that mean for me and how can I do better and how can you do better? How can we do better? And so maybe you're like me. Maybe your heart's just been heavy. Maybe there's just been a lot that you've been feeling this week. And that's okay. And that's what we're going to talk about today. This week I was out for a run, and it's one of my few times every day that I get out of my house. And I just go for a run in my neighborhood, nothing fancy, not too far, but I go for a little run around my neighborhood and get out, usually around lunchtime, just something to do. And on my run, I usually get to see a little bit of the Florida wildlife, just little bits and pieces of things. And I'm running by, and there's this turtle that I've been seeing recently. He's a tortoise, and he's this orangish, brownish, like tortoise, really cool looking, big round shell. And I started to become friends with him, or at least I think I have. I don't think he maybe considers me as close of a friend as I consider him. This tells you where we're at in this quarantine time, right? And so I'm like fully invested in this turtle's life. And so I was running by, and this turtle was out, and he's eating, he's doing his thing. And so I ran down to the corner where I usually run, and I ran around the cul-de-sac that I end up in, and I was running back towards my house, and I passed him again, but this time he had started to move, and he was on the go. And for this little turtle, he was booking it. I mean, he was really hit the move, and he got up to the road, and he started to cross the road, and as he was going across the road, I saw him get terrified, and he just stopped. He just stopped in the middle of the road because cars started coming and things started happening around him, and you could tell he got scared. And so he pulled into his shell, and he just sat there right in the middle of the road. And cars are going around him and all the activity is still happening, but he's so terrified that he just closes himself up in his shell right in the middle of the road. And maybe that's how you feel during this time. Maybe you have started into something where there's been a lot of hectic movement. There's been a lot of motion. Maybe it feels like there's been a lot going on, and that you are at the place where you're like, I'm just done. I'm just tired. I'm just out. Like, this is all I've got. And maybe you're like, I'm just giving up. I'm just ready to back down. I'm ready to lose heart. And what I want to talk about today is if you're in that place where you're so tired, where you're ready to just call it quits, and you're like, no, I'm giving up, I'm backing down, I'm losing heart. Because let's face it, a lot of us are in that boat right now, right? As we've been looking at this Take Heart series, there's part of us that like, yeah, when Jesus is around and there's miracles happening in the New Testament, yeah, it's easy to take heart. It's easy when things are up and to the right. It's easy to take heart when things are going from bad to good. But what if things are at this point starting to feel not good, but starting to slip back to bad? I mean, what if I'm starting to feel exhausted myself? What if I'm starting to feel overwhelmed myself? What if I'm starting to feel this fatigue that can set in? I was reading an article the other day about millennials, and it called millennials the tired generation. And part of it's because of the hustle culture we live in. Part of it's because of the technology that we deal with day in and day out. Part of it is just because of the overwhelming fatigue that we live in all the time. And it actually talked about how we are the overwhelmed or the tired generation. And I don't know about you, I can relate to that. I can relate to the feeling of just feeling tired, where you just feel fatigued, whether it's physically or it's emotionally or it's spiritually. You just feel this fatigue starting to set in. And maybe you do, maybe you understand that. I mean, maybe it's because you've been stuck at home as a parent, and maybe parenting is just getting tiring. Maybe having the kids home all day and having to take care of them is getting exhausting. Maybe it's in your marriage. Maybe you are spending time with your spouse that you are not used to. And maybe in your marriage, you guys are starting to get to a place where the outside forces are starting to frustrate you internally, and you're starting to feel this fatigue. Maybe it's some other things where you've got some things going on with your career, with your work, and it's starting to feel like this fatigue is setting in right now. Again, studies once said that we would lose productivity during this time, that people's work hours would go down if they were working from home. But instead, what we're seeing is right now, people working from home are working more hours than ever because they can't separate work from home life. And the two things are getting so intermixed and interwoven that they can't tell one from the other. And so we're actually working more than we usually do. And maybe you're starting to feel that right now where you're at. Maybe as a student, you're starting to feel fatigue, being at home all the time and not sure how to get through this. And maybe at the end of this semester that you're at right now, you're just like, I'm done. I'm out. I'm so tired. I'm burned out. Maybe it's in relationships. I don't know, but maybe you're starting to feel this fatigue that happens, that sets in on us. And you're starting to not take heart. You're starting to lose heart. And for all of us, I think we can understand that. I know for me, I can feel that. And let's face it, 2020 has been the longest, shortest year of our lives. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. It simultaneously feels like it's been like 4 days long and 4 years long, all at once. It's the longest, shortest year of our lives. And today, if you're like, how do I get through this? How do I get past this fatigue? How do I continue to move into this? I've got good news, because that's literally exactly what I'm going to talk about today. So I'm so glad you asked. And we're going to look at the book of Hebrews today, because in Hebrews, what we see is that they want us to know that we should not lose heart. So today we're not talking about taking heart, because again, that can feel easy. That can feel like something we're supposed to do. We take heart when things are good. When Jesus comes and performs miracles, when there are beautiful moments happening, yeah, we take heart. That's all good. That's all easy. But what happens when we start to lose heart? How do we act when we're going to lose heart? What does that look like for us? And so for us, I want us to look at Hebrews chapter 12. And look at this advice that we see on how to not lose heart. Now, Hebrews is written by a mysterious author. We don't know who wrote Hebrews. We don't have the actual author's name. I have my own theories, and I could tell you who I guess it is, and it's probably one that's not a popular guess, but the author of Hebrews is probably somebody who traveled with Paul, somebody who knew Paul but was not Paul. And also, they did not put their name on it. It seems almost for reasons that are obvious, like they didn't want people to know their name. Because most of the books that were written carried the name of the author because it carried weight. I would suggest that maybe it was written by a woman, perhaps Priscilla, who traveled with Paul, because she wouldn't want her name on it, because in this time, a woman's name would not carry weight. It would actually be a negative thing. And so I would venture the guess that it was written by Priscilla. And we don't know everything about it. We don't know who they were writing to. And what we don't know is who they are, but what we do know is how they were feeling. And they were a group that was starting to lose heart. They were getting tired. They were becoming fatigued emotionally, spiritually, physically. They were getting worn out on this thing. They were starting to back down. They were starting to give up. They were starting to lose heart. And this letter is written to give them hope and to tell them how to get through those times. And so in Hebrews chapter 12, this is what it says. We're just going to look at 3 verses today. Very simple. But it says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and he sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. So that you will not grow weary and lose heart. Now, the first thing that they tell us to do is that we're going to be people who run. That we are people who were born to run, in the great words of Bruce Springsteen. We were made to run. Maybe you're like, no, I'm not really that person. I'm more of like a galloper. I kind of gallivant a little bit. I really don't consider myself a runner. At best, I jog. Maybe I yog. It's a soft J. You're like, no, I'm not a runner. That's not who I am. According to this, we were born to run. We were born to keep moving. We weren't born to walk halfway into something and then hole up into our shells and sit in the midst of the traffic around us. That's not who we are called to be. We are born to run. We are called to move. That's who we are. And so what's happening here is we're being told that we are supposed to keep moving, that we are supposed to keep going, but so many of us right now are stopping because we've lost heart. We don't feel like we can do that, and so we feel like at best we can barely move. And so you might be wondering, well, how do I do this then? How do I keep moving? I remember there was a time where I had decided I was going to be a runner. This was a bad call in my life, but I decided I was going to run like a lot. And so I was training for a half marathon at one point, and I actually was training for a half marathon that was in like 2 months. Well, then I got an email saying if I signed up for a different half marathon, I could do that one for half price. And I thought, half price marathon. First of all, guys, I don't know why people pay to run. It is a free activity, like totally free. You don't need equipment or anything. But I did. I was paying for the first half marathon, and I thought half price to run 13 more miles? Sign me up. And so half price on a half marathon. So I didn't look at the calendar well, but my first marathon was 2 months down the road. The second one that I had just signed up for was only 1 month down the road. It was actually earlier than the other one. And so I now had to truncate my running time and get myself ready for this marathon, this half marathon. And so I did. I ramped everything up. And in the process, I injured myself quite a bit. And I had all these things going on with my Achilles. I had part of my foot that was really, really sore. I could barely walk, but I was determined I was going to keep running. And so I got to the place where I was running, and I was starting to get better and better at it, but I was getting more and more pain from it. And I got to that first half marathon, and I did pretty well, actually. But after that one, I couldn't stop training. I had another one coming up a month later. So I continued to push myself. I continued to actually hurt myself. I continued to push through the pain, and I ran the second one. And at that one, I literally barely passed the finish line before I could not even walk to my car. I was in so much pain. And so a few weeks later, I was in recovery mode, and I thought, you know what, I'm literally never running again. I'm never going to run again. And my friend Raul had asked me at that time, he said, hey, would you want to run with me, Kevin? And he said, I want to get into running a little bit more. I'd like it if maybe the two of us could meet up and we could just run in the mornings. And I told him, like, actually, I don't know if I can do it. And he was like, no, it'll be really easy. Let's just get together and run. And so I finally one morning showed up. It was like 5:30 in the morning. I went to go run with him, and I warned him. I said, listen, I'm not sure I can do this. I'm in a lot of pain. I'm feeling this like in a lot of parts of my body. I'm not sure that I should be running. And so what he told me is he said that he knows a guy who trains Olympians. And he said, you know how he gets them to run properly? And I asked him, nope. How does he do it? And he said he actually takes them out and tells them, see your finish line over there? Walk to it. And they walk to the finish line. They do that a few times, and then the next day they come out, and he'll tell them, you got to get to that finish line, but today you have to do it 20 seconds faster than you did it yesterday. And the next day he'll bring them back out. You got to get to your finish line, but you have to shave a minute off your time. The next day, you got to get to your finish line. You got to shave another minute off your time, another minute off your time, another minute off your time, until they are no longer walking, but they are running. For some of us, there's two things I want us to take from this. For some of us, we are in a spot where we have been in pain from things that have happened in our past. And we are not in a place where we feel like we can take heart. We're in a place where we feel like we are losing heart. And we are tired, and we are weary, and we are fatigued emotionally and spiritually and physically. We are living with a pain that we think is never going to let us run again. At best, we might be able to gallop, but we are not going to run. We might trot a little bit, but we are not ready to run again. Maybe it's a relationship you had in your past. Maybe it's a mistake you made at one point. Maybe it's something that somebody said to you. Maybe it's something that you've said to yourself. And you've decided the pain is too much. I am not moving forward. I'm just going to stay here. I am going to hole up in this shell and just sit here in the middle of traffic. This is what my life is now. And I cannot take heart. Don't tell me to run. I can't even walk. And first of all, what we have to learn is that maybe the first step to running is walking. And eventually we'll become great runners, but we have to at least start moving again. Secondly, the important thing to take away from this is you have to surround yourself with people who are willing to push you to run again. That doesn't mean that you overlook the pain of your past. It doesn't mean you move past your problems without dealing with them. What it means is that you have people around you who see the potential in you and know that you were born to run. You were made to move. And they see that within you. And they say, I know that you've gone through pain. I know that you're still experiencing some of it, but I'm here to help you move forward. I'm here to help you push through this. I'm here to help you take the next step. See, what happens here is in this verse, it says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses. Now, great educational moment here. When you exegete Scripture, whenever you're going to take Scripture apart and you want to study it, anytime you see the word therefore, you have to stop and ask yourself, when I see therefore, what is it there for? Because therefore means it's alluding to something before it. It's happening before the therefore. So in theory, I'm actually doing a bad job of telling you this verse because we really shouldn't start with the therefore, but let me fill you in quickly on why it's there. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great crowd of witnesses, well, what does that mean? Why is this cloud of witnesses there? What is all that? Therefore refers to Hebrews chapter 11, the chapter before, which is called the Hall of Faith. In the Hall of Faith, what happens is the author of Hebrews lists off the great heroes of the faith. So they go from Abraham, who was a man who did not believe he would ever have children, let alone a nation, that God comes through for him. Then there's people like Joseph, who was told, you're going to be a king, you're going to be a ruler, you're going to become a prince in Egypt, and he spends most of his life in a prison cell instead. Or there's people like Rahab, who's a prostitute, who's been sold into prostitution for most of her life, yet she remains faithful to a God who she believes will save her, and in fact does. There's a hall of faith. And what they're referring to here in this Hebrews passage is that there is a great cloud of witnesses. There's a great group that goes before you, and they are still with you, and they are running with you. Whenever you want to move forward in life, sometimes it's great to look back first and look at the things that have been accomplished in history before you look forward into your future. And what they're saying here is there is a cloud around you. There are people around you. There are people who have gone before you. There are matriarchs and patriarchs of the faith who have struggled with the same things you're struggling with right now, whether it's in your relationships, whether it's in your family, whether it's in your financial position. You are going through things people have gone through before, and you, just like they, will overcome it because you're surrounded by people of faith who are going to help you through it. What it says here is it's reminding us that the totality of your team is not just the people you can see. Because right now, you might be in a spot where you're like, I'm holed up in my house. It's me just all by myself. I don't get to see a lot of people. I'm not sure anybody even cares anymore. I'm not sure there are people around me anymore. No, the totality of your team is not just the people you can see. There is more to it. There are more people around you who are saying, you can do this. And they are saying, we are here with you. We will run with you. We believe that you can do this. I mean, I think right now we feel like nobody's around. We feel like nobody cares, like nobody's with us. I mean, over the last couple of weeks, I've gone house to house throughout our neighborhoods, and I've been dropping off these signs that we made for the church. And I've been taking selfies of me dropping these signs in people's yards. Some people I get to talk to. Most people, I just drop the sign off and I leave. And when I'm doing that, I take a selfie just to like show myself putting down the sign, and also so I can remember all of the multiple offenses that I have committed in a lot of neighborhoods where I think signs are not permitted. And I'm sorry if you got in trouble for that, but blame me, not you. I have a selfie to prove that I put that in your yard, not you. So you're welcome. But I've been going house to house, dropping off these signs. And what's amazing is the texts I get afterwards, the messages I get on Facebook, or the emails we get from people who talk about how much these signs mean to them. In fact, we got an email just this week from a lady in our church from Canada who said that her neighbor next door is a Jewish lady who moved down here from New York and was just so impacted by the sign that she had in her yard that said, "You are awesome. Hope to see you soon, Restoration Church." She was so impacted by this sign. And she was saying, like, I love that your church would do that. I love the message of that sign. It just is so uplifting. It means so much. That finally Canada was like, "Do you want my sign?" And she was like, "If you don't mind." And so Canada gave her sign, which reminds me, I need to go give Canada a new sign. But she gave her sign because it meant so much to her. And the messages I get from people, the comments I get from people, is that this yard sign means so much to them because it reminds them that they're not alone. That just because they can't see a lot of people around them doesn't mean there aren't people there who are rooting for them, who are pushing them and saying, "You can do this. You weren't born to lose heart now. You were born to take heart and carry on. Don't stop here. Keep moving forward." We have to surround ourselves with people like this, but we also have to know that we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses around us at all times. And for some of us, when we start to question and everything makes us second guess God, there are some things that maybe your bank account doesn't look the way you think it should. Maybe your family doesn't look the way you think it should. Maybe your career right now doesn't feel like it's where it's supposed to be. Maybe just this season you're going through grief, you're going through pain, you're going through loss. Maybe what you need to realize is that you're not alone in that. That you are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. Some who have been exactly where you are, and they've come through the other side, and some who are willing to walk with you exactly where you're at and take it step by step until you're ready to run again. And so they say that we're made to run, and it says after that, "Let us throw off everything that hinders and sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us." And I love this because it says, let us throw off everything that hinders. Notice this, it says and the sin that so easily entangles, but it's actually saying, let us throw off everything that hinders, sin or not. Right now, many of us are in a season where we are seeing our priorities shift. We're seeing our schedules rearranged. And we have the question of what are the most important things to keep in our lives? What are the things that matter most? And maybe as things start to readjust, we need to look at this and say, as I want to move forward, as I want to run again, what are the things that are holding me back? And as we're in this season, what are the things that I can shift in my schedule, in my priorities, in my lifestyle that might be holding me back? You might have things that are sin, but you might have other things that you've just made a routine in your life that doesn't need to be there. There may be some other things that you've let become a hindrance that you need to throw off to the side because you're never going to be able to run while you carry those things. I think about this a lot when I was a few months ago in Europe. This was back when people could travel and you could just fly places on airplanes and go to other countries and stuff. It was crazy times. And I remember that there was this day where we decided we were going to start a backpacking trip. Now, we did stay in Airbnbs. It was a posh trip for backpacking, but we decided we were only taking backpacks with us. And that was our entire luggage for a multi-country trip as we would spend 1 week zigzagging our way from Amsterdam all the way down to Venice. And so we only had backpacks. The things on our backs are all we have. Now, normally I'm not a light packer. Normally I pack everything. I don't know if you're like me, but you're putting things in a suitcase and you're should I take suspenders? I've never worn suspenders before, but maybe I'll wear suspenders. I should take the suspenders just in case somewhere on this trip I need suspenders. I mean, you know who you are, people, the overpackers, where suddenly you're yeah, I should take that. I've never used it, but I'll take it on this trip. That's normally the way I pack, and that's normally the way I'm wired. But we suddenly had to say, what are the most essential things we're going to need to get through this trip? What are the most important things? Because I don't want to carry more than I have to carry. I don't want to bear more than I have to bear. I want to be able to get through this trip as smoothly as possible and be able to move around. And so every purchase we made, this is what was interesting. Every purchase we made, every store we stopped at, every gift shop or souvenir place, we would actually have to look at it and think, is this worth it? If I buy this thing, I have to carry it with me. Maybe for entire cities and countries. If I buy this thing, I have to be able to fit it in this bag and I have to actually bear the load of that. Is it worth it? There might be things in your life that you have to look at right now. Maybe relationships, maybe habits, maybe routines, maybe in your job. It may be the thoughts that you're having in your own mind where you go, do I want to carry this? Is this worth me carrying? Is this worth me bearing this? Or is this just something that is going to hold me back? I think we're only designed to carry so much. But we put other things on ourselves and we decide to carry things that are just going to hinder us. We're never going to be able to run at the pace God has called us to because we're carrying so much extra baggage. And they're saying we have to throw off everything that entangles us, everything that holds us back, sin and not, so that we can run with perseverance the race that's been marked out for us. And I think that's an important line. Let me just quickly say, the race that's marked out for you might look different than the race that's marked out for somebody else. If you're sitting here comparing yourself to their house, to their career, to their car, to their marriage, to their relationships, to their kids, whatever it is, that might not be the race that was marked out for you. But we have had a race that's marked out for us, and we have to run it with perseverance. And so we can't let the things hold us back, and we have to surround ourselves, not with everybody, but with the right ones, as we go on this race together. And after that, it says, fixing our eyes on Jesus, that's the author or the pioneer and perfecter of our faith, For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and he sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. Maybe you don't feel like you're ready to run. And what they're trying to remind us is that you're not running on your strength alone. You're not running on your ability alone. You're running on the victory of Jesus. I know that over the last few weeks, I've been giving you my favorite movie reviews, and I'm not going to stop now because I think it's important. And I was thinking about this scene the other day, and I had read about it in a book, and it's from the movie Moneyball. And I don't know if you remember this movie, Moneyball, but it's a true story of a manager of the Oakland Athletics. And the Oakland A's, they had decided to do baseball different than everybody else. And they had put all their heart and mind and soul into one way of doing this game of baseball. And they really believed in it, but the manager who had done the whole thing, Billy Beane, who had put all of this together, he changed the game for the rest of baseball's eternity. He changed the game on how it was played. But Billy Beane, because they did not win a national championship, because they did not win the entire World Series, he felt like a failure. In fact, in Donald Miller's book, Scary Close, he details this. He says, in the end, though the A's didn't win the World Series and Beane felt like a loser, he believed that unless you were the greatest, you weren't great, and he sulked. He was even called by the Boston Red Sox and offered a $12 million contract to manage the team, but that wasn't enough to convince him he was good. He holed up. He went into his shell. He stopped in the middle of the road and let the traffic go around him. And it says, finally, his friend Peter called him into the film room and sat him down. And he said, I want you to see something, Billy. I don't want to watch the film, Billy said. Just watch this, Peter said. And he started rolling a clip of a 240-pound infielder for the AA Diamondbacks team, who was known not only as a power hitter, but for also being too slow and too scared to round first base. He's literally afraid to run. In the clip, this young baseball player hits the ball solidly and feels so good about it that he decides he's going to try to round first and make it to second. But tragedy happens. As he rounds first, he trips on the bag and he lands on his belly. His worst nightmare has come true. He tried and he failed. And Peter paused the tape at this moment, and he rolled it back and forth so Billy could see how funny the guy looked as he tripped and fell. He could show him his failure over and over again. Show him how he should just lose heart. Oh, that's sad, Billy said. They're all laughing at him. But Peter let the video roll and asked Billy to keep watching. And as the camera closed in on the player, crawling on his belly to make sure he was safe at first, the first baseman leaned down to him, telling him to get up and keep running. He told him, keep running. The guy looked up in confusion, his helmet nearly covering his eyes, and the first baseman said to him, you hit a home run. You cleared the back fence by 60 feet. Do you see, some of us, we're so afraid to run. We're so afraid to keep moving forward. We're so okay with staying put in the fatigue we're in the tiredness we feel. We're willing to just stay put. We're ready to hole up in the middle of traffic. But we have to realize that there's been a home run hit, that we cleared the fence by 60 feet, and that we have to get up and keep running, not because of our strength, but because there's a author and a perfecter, a pioneer of our faith on whom we fix our eyes, and we can continue to run towards and because of him. And Donald Miller goes on to explain this scene, and he says, I think about that scene from time to time when I meet with somebody who's been lied about, or has made a few mistakes, or whose identity is under siege. they don't even know, I think. They don't know that they can still live and love and connect. They don't know who they really are and what they're capable of. And maybe you don't even understand today who you are and what you're really capable of. Maybe all you feel is this exhaustion. You feel tired. You feel fatigued. You feel like you have lost heart. Mentally, emotionally, spiritually, that you have lost heart. When I went out and saw my friend the turtle in the road, I ran out into traffic after him, and I picked him up, and I carried him back to the other side of the road, and I let him loose. Once he realized that he was surrounded by somebody who was there to help him, and once he realized there were no more hindrances holding him back, he came out of his shell and he ran out as fast as a turtle can go back into the woods. Some of us, we need to know we're surrounded by people who are willing to bear our burdens, who are willing to carry us in the times that are hard, who are willing to help us take those first steps of walking to get us back into running. And some of us, we need to realize that there are some things holding us back that we need to let go of today. Whether it's just pain or it's guilt or it's grief, there might be some things we need to let go of today. Because we were born to run this race toward Jesus, the author, the pioneer, the perfecter of our faith. We weren't born to lose heart. We were born to take heart and to continue to pursue him and his way in the midst of this world. So today, as we wrap this up, would you pray with me wherever you're at as we finish this Take Heart series together? Jesus, I thank you for who you are. I thank you for being the author and the perfecter and the pioneer of our faith. I thank you for surrounding us in moments that we feel alone. I thank you for being with us at the times where we feel afraid. I thank you for caring about us in the moments that we need courage. That you are with us, that you are active, that you are pursuing us at all times. And so we pray that we would pursue you. That we would realize the race that you've marked out before us. That we would realize the path that you've put us on, and that we would pursue you. That we would not lose heart during this time. We would not be tired or discouraged or fatigued. That we would be willing to move forward, to take those small steps that feel like walking until they turn into running, and before we know it, we're running after you. And so I pray that you'd be with each one of us who are feeling brokenhearted this week. I pray you'd be with each one of us who feel exhausted during this time. For each one of us who feel tired or weary or worn out or just fatigued spiritually or emotionally or physically. That you would be with us as we take these steps again and as we learn to run towards you. We love you. We thank you for who you are and how much you love us. We pray all these things in your name. Amen. Have a great week and hop on Zoom right now and RSVP for services next Sunday because we can't wait to see you in person. Have a great week.